All right, today's video is going to be a little bit different than the past tutorials. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I created the artwork for the backdrops of these custom Kong drum designer and Combinator patches that I've built. If you haven't seen the previous tutorials, I basically showed you guys that if you right click on either the Combinator or the Kong drum designer and come down here to where it says select backdrop, those two units give you the option to replace the background, everything behind the knobs and buttons, with your own custom JPEG image. So if we come over to Photoshop, you can see how I created that. This is the actual image that I'm using to place behind all the buttons and faders on the Kong drum designer. And in the template you can get from the Propeller Heads website or what came on your install discs for Reason, there's this full template. Here's the original that has your placeholders, which are the keys that come default on the unit itself, no matter what. Those are all your functions in the actual program. And then it gives you just some basic lighting effects. You see the shadows on the side, the edge beveled, all the text. And it gives you a couple preloaded backgrounds that you can choose to use, or use your own custom image if you want. So basically, by affecting all of these, we can get something much more elaborate and cool looking, something that stands out from the rest. And again, you know, if you want to create your own custom patches to put together your own refills or whatever, you're going to want some really nice artwork that stands out apart from the rest of the rack extensions that are coming out nowadays and all that kind of stuff. So let's walk through the basic process and try to create something similar to what I did on the other image with this original template that comes from the Propeller Head website. All right, first of all, I know I want to use a custom background image, which is just going to be actually the cover of my upcoming album called Xtra2Rest. So this is something I've made previously. I'm just going to open the JPEG and place it here. You can see it comes in with this box, the X'd out box around it. This is actually so I can adjust the size before I place it in here. I want to come up to one of the corners and start moving it. Now if I hold shift, it's going to make sure it stays in a perfect square, stays in proportion with itself. And now if I also hold option at the same time, it's going to scale it from the middle instead of the anchored corner. So let's bring this up to about the size that we want it. Let's make it pretty big. Maybe like that. And I'm going to hit enter. Now this is the background I'm going to work with. Let's say I want to reduce the transparency a little bit here. So let's come up to opacity and just drop it down a little so it's not as bright. Maybe right there. Okay, now let's see. Where's my Kong? There we go. There's the Kong logo. Okay, let me delete that background. I'm going to delete these colors that I'm not working with so my template stays nice and neat. I want to take this Kong logo. I'm just going to turn it off in case I want to bring it back for some reason. But instead of that logo being there, I want to import another custom logo that I've created. If I choose this rectangle, Hold this if it's not a rectangle, hold it down, choose the rectangle marquee tool, outline what you want to copy, and then come up here to edit, copy. Let's go back over to our template that we're working on. Edit, paste. And it looks like it came in the middle. So I'm going to change over to my arrow tool and move this over about where I want it. And now if I come up to the edit menu, down to free transform, that I can also get if I hold Command on the Apple and T. And now this bounding box, as it's called, should look familiar. We're going to grab the corner again, hold Shift to make it in proportion, hold Option to make it scale from the middle. And now let's shrink that down about where we want it. And I'm going to move it over here. If I hold Shift now, it will move it straight across here without going up or down. Let's put that here today. And now let's label that in deep logo. I want to pull it down right above my custom artwork here to keep everything neat. And now let's choose the type tool over here on the left and click right about where we want to make it. It looks like that's way too big. So I'm going to shrink it down, let's say 45. Type whatever you want it to say. Now if I double click on that, come up to the color, I want to make that. Let's come over to this yellowish orange and make it a little bit more orange. Something kind of brownish. Now right here, I'm going to hold Command and hit H, and that all that's going to do is make my highlight of the text invisible for now, even though it is still highlighted. Now I want to come up and activate the font window here by clicking on it. And now if I scroll through by using the up and down keys, I can just fly through all of my fonts. Let's just pick something big and fat that's going to work well with some effects on it. We'll move it right into place here. And now I'll make sure that that text layer is selected. I want to come down to my effects here. And I'm going to choose a drop shadow from the drop down menu, even though you couldn't see that. Right here, my distance fader, I want to, you see that'll make it look like it's standing out further than or less. So let's put it about here. And now my size is going to feather it out and blur it a little bit. So that looks pretty good. Let's add a little bit of a bevel and emboss. I think I want to make that just a 1. Leave everything else where it is. And let's just throw a texture on it for fun. That one looks pretty cool. Okay, and then maybe let's see how this looks. Just a little bit of an outer glow. Come down to the size. Let's put that at 4, and then I'm going to bring my opacity down. Let's say to 60. And so now that just makes it stand out and pop out against that logo I threw in the background there. As you can see with this one, I used a pen to actually create this graffiti style lettering, and it's a little bit different, but we're using a simple logo here just to save a little bit of time today. So the next thing I did, if you come up to this little folder here where it says helper text and scale, drop that down, and the text is there. It looks like what I did was use this rectangular mask, highlight the master level, come up to edit and just say cut. We'll get that out of there. Now I want to use my text tool again, and we'll click it right underneath where that text used to be. And again, let's bring our size down probably to, I'm going to guess about 10, maybe a little bit bigger. And so I crank that. Let's bring it more to a gray. I guess I got to double click on the T so I can highlight the text. Again, Command and H will make my highlight go away, even though it's still selected. If I choose my color up here, I want to bring it more to match the logo I have over here. And now if I click on my arrow key over here, I'm in selected mode, and I can just bump it down 1 or 2 pixels with my up and down arrows, or left and right. But I think that looks pretty good right about there. So now let's come over to this rounded rectangle tool. I want to just create a small little box around here. Actually, let me undo that real quick because I want to make sure that I have this selected here. What I just did was create a path, which we don't want. We want to make a shape, which is this selection right here. So let's come back over here, and now we'll create that shape. Again, select my arrow key, and I can just use my up and down arrows to get it positioned where I want it. Now that's just going to highlight the VU meter there a little bit. Next, let's see. I want to find this background of the keys here to see exactly how big it is. So I want to come up to my placeholder, these keys that are here. I want to use my magic wand. I guess that's not going to work. Let's go a different route. We'll go back to that rounded rectangle tool that we were using. And it looks like the corner radius, which you'll find right up here, this radius should be at 10. And it has to be at 10 before you create this rounded square here, or it won't work properly. Now you can see what happened is I created that square above the buttons or the pads. So I want to bring that down just above where my logo was created. Actually, let's bring that below the logo. And again, if I come down to my effects, I'm going to choose a drop shadow again for that one. I'm going to set my distance at 0. I'll bump up my spread maybe to 5. And then I'll leave my size around 8. Maybe let's bump up the spread a tiny bit more. And you can see that just kind of, if we get rid of it, it made those keys just pop out from the background a little bit more. Pretty simple, but you know, it really gives you that effect of depth once you're using the machine. Let's do the same thing for the pad settings box over here. And it looks like it created that effect for me automatically. I'm not sure why, but if it didn't, you want to come down to, let's call this pad emboss. So come down and we'll call this one settings emboss. If these effects didn't automatically put themselves in place for you, your settings are just different than mine. I want you to click on the pad emboss layer, hold the Option key on a Mac, and you will just drag this up to the settings, and you should have the same effects then on this settings layer as on the pads layer. Now, one more thing we want to do is I'm going to hold down this where we were getting our rounded rectangle, and I'm just going to use a regular straight-sided rectangle. And I want to highlight around the program screen up here in the top corner. And as you can see, my effects put themselves in place automatically. We'll call this program emboss. And it really, if we delete these 3, you'll see the difference very easily of how much extra depth it adds to your machine, and it gives it more of a realistic look. So now another thing I want to do is highlight this simple light and shadows. And well, let's do the edge, simple light, and shadows. If we highlight all 3 of those and then drag them down to this new layer. Now really all we did there was double up those highlight effects, and you can see we added a whole lot more depth again. Let's take this opacity down a little bit because the effect's a little bit too strong for me. Maybe we'll put it around 50. And that's pretty much it. I want to deselect the eye on this top layer with all the buttons. And then come down to here in the file menu, save for web and devices. I want to make it a JPEG, maximum quality. I'm going to highlight progressive, which gives me a little bit better of a render. And then I'm going to save it as Kong backdrop. Let's call this Kong backdrop 2. And I have a folder here called Reason Instruments Backdrops that I've created in my main music folder. So I'm just going to save it out to there. And now, if we come back over to Reason, I want to right click on my Kong Drum Designer. I'm going to choose Select Backdrop. And now let's put in that backdrop that we just created. Click OK, and you can see it right there. So now you're basically going to go through the same process to get the Combinator, although, let's see, in Photoshop here, you can see it's just a little bit different of a template. You have some different color options to select. But everything's basically the same. You just want to make sure you take off those buttons. Take everything off of there before you save it out as a JPEG image. Or else, you know, they're just going to be hidden by the ones that come into the machine default, you know. There's no way to get rid of these buttons and knobs and everything. That's automatic when you open it up. So you're really just creating the art for behind that. So I hope that helps you guys create some cool custom machines in the future. And as I showed you, if you want to just create a Combinator, let's say put a backdrop in there. I like to also throw in a 6x2 line mixer, and then I save that out. I call it my blank Combinator, and I put it over in my favorites menu. So you can see if I go here, create instrument, right here in my favorites is the blank Combinator right up near the top. And I use that all the time. That's how I start off all my instruments right off the bat. So every time I create something custom or a custom Combinator, whatever, it's automatically got my artwork in there, and I don't even have to, you know, I save seconds at a time, but they add up to hours by the end of the day. So thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
It's just science.